February conversation as part of TLC's monthly conversations. As the email said, we're going to talk about student competitions. I would kind of prefer to say more about the competitions and what we do and how we can encourage students to actually participate and also help each other out with ideas about how we train, how we practice with the students ahead of time. And then, if there's interest, we can talk about how we fund those trips, but kind of wanted to keep that separate as well as we could. So, we just wrapped up the SAEA meetings last week, or actually on Tuesday. We had 82 students compete at the Quiz Bowl. Is that about right?
82 or 7, I can't remember.
We were in the 80s, which is down from I think where they're normally at. But certainly, finances are always an issue. There were some schools that normally attend that weren't for whatever reason. So I'm sure that impacted the attendance. But I guess we can start about the Quiz Bowl, and then we can talk about some other competitions. And they don't necessarily have to be just Quiz Bowl or with SAEA or AAEA. We can delve into some of the other things that are out there, whether that's NAMA or NACTA as well. So I'm going to be quiet and open up the floor and let somebody talk about Quiz Bowl and how it benefits their students.
I mean, I can throw one out of, I went to A&M Commerce. Some of you may know Dr. Jose Lopez. His approach is, and it may have changed since I was there, but when I was there, it was find a good kid that was good in class. We trained a little bit, but not a ton. And it was more about seeing the conference and like that. And I will say that was the first time I ever saw an academic conference and was like, so y'all just get to travel to these and do a poster every now and then. And so I will say somebody, for me, that was my first trip, one of my first flights ever. Got to meet a lot of cool people from around the place, and it was a more of a laid back approach. I know other schools and like WT and places like that, we train a bit more than the program I was in did, but I still really enjoyed it and can pinpoint it to one of the reasons I decided academia was a suitable place for me, at least to begin with, of just kind of take those nerves out of it. And then the next stage can be presenting at one of them. And the next stage is talking to people about masters and things like that. So from a student perspective, it was really beneficial for me, even from a less, I kind of push more the competition stance of it too, of there's multiple benefits, but we're going to try. So yeah, that's more of a student's perspective.
Well, I'll jump in. I've been doing Quiz Bowl and student competition since 2009. So just a few years. So obviously I didn't have any of that, coming through because I didn't do ag econ at all as an undergrad. But what I really seen is the change and that it really helps the students. So like Chelsea was saying, they network. I like the SAEA because they really force that networking, right? They really encourage the students to meet other students from different schools. So I'll give you, for instance, this time. So I had 3 students that are all interested in graduate school. And so again, that's why I took them, is because they're interested in grad school and they have that graduate school fair. So if your school doesn't have the graduate school fair at the SAEA, you're missing out, hugely missing out. It makes a huge difference for my students. So that is, for me here at UWRF, we are only supposed to take students on 1, maybe 2 trips while they are students here because they're trying to spread the wealth of the money, which is limited. And so they want students, all the students to have multiple, to have opportunities. So more students, fewer opportunities, as opposed to a handful of students with a bunch, if that makes sense. Where when I was at San Angelo, I would try to pick them as sophomores and then take them for 3 years so that they can be competitive. And I would take them to the SAEA and the AAEA. But they come back energized and ready for graduate school. I had one guy that was wafering on it, like, and I was like, oh my goodness, this is exactly what I need to do. Why would I even waver on it? So that helped the students. It wasn't about the competition as it was about the networking, meeting faculty. They went into, I make them go watch a talk, not just look at posters, but watch a talk. That's part of their requirements for attending, especially since we're paying for a chunk of it. That made a huge, they were all like, oh, I know how to give one now. Like, oh, that wasn't as bad as I thought it would be, because they have this narrative in their head of what they think that it's just. And now one got in one where it was somebody talking way over his head. And then he went to the next one and was like, okay, so that just, was a one-off. So made a huge difference to them. I know we don't want to speak of money, but I will add this: for students to go, they all have to have a buy-in. So then I get my dedicated students. So each of them, since we usually fly or something, they all have to put in $100 to be able to go as their buy-in. So for those, you talk about how do I get students involved? How do I keep them engaged? And how do I get them to actually show up to it? That is what we do to keep that process, to have a little bit of that buy-in, other than buying meals for them that they have to buy. So that's my 2 cents.
I have more questions. Hi, I'm Na. I graduated from Kentucky. I'm now in Arizona. So the reason I'm born in Kentucky because I saw how the baseball team was organized when I was doing graduate school there. And I thought I want to start one day, and it never happened. So it never happened in my institution yet. So I wonder, like I'm asking myself, what's going on? So I feel I like the model that ties the quiz ball with a credit course, like one credit course or those federal course, so students actually have those structured preparation as well earning credits. And I think the challenge, money is one, the support, the money, and 2 is the identify students early on, so that when you enroll the course, they actually have some time to perform in the conference, not their senior graduating year, but kind of early on. That's another identify students early on. 2 is just, I guess, my teaching load. Like, how do I shift my teaching load to create this new thing? I wonder what was your opinions. You all have good ideas or anything can help me out on these 3 challenges.
I think this is one thing we deal with from time to time is students want to go, but they don't always want to take the competition seriously. They see it as kind of a paid vacation. We're fortunate here that, with students paying in fees, we use that fee for the travel aspect. And so in the past, we've had students that, they go and participate, but as soon as they're out, they kind of blow off the rest of the conference and can take some of the benefits or lose out on some of those benefits. So, that's something that I think what Sierra was saying with the buy-in is very, skin in the game to help in those situations. I think, as unfortunate as COVID is and has been, some of that mentality, I think, hasn't come back since, at least here at UT Martin, since we were able to start taking students. I mean, we kind of lost some of that institutional knowledge amongst the students that, hey, we can go participate and then blow everything off and go see these cool things in the city. I think that's kind of been lost to some degree, which can be a good thing. It's not that we don't want to have them have their or let them have fun, but if we're going to invest all of this money in them, we expect some seriousness of purpose. That's a failure to address some of your concerns on. I think with many schools that kind of lost that institutional knowledge among the students, the word of mouth from student to student, I think we're starting to regain some momentum. So, yeah, I think that's going to help. And now that we're out of some of the COVID restrictions, that's certainly going to keep momentum going here and probably elsewhere.
Hey, Ross, I just wondered, there may be there's some faces I don't recognize. I wondered if there's time enough just to run around and say who we are, where we're from.
Thank you for that point. Go ahead. Go ahead, Roger.
All right, this is Roger Brown coming to you live from Lexington, Kentucky, University of Kentucky.
So I'm Sierra Howery. I'm at UW River Falls.
She is the queen of SAEA football.
Stan Ernst, I'm at Penn State.
I'm Danielle Kaminsky at Fort Hays State University.
This is Na from University of Arizona and a proud alumni of Kentucky, Lexington.
I'm Mark Jenner. I'm at a tiny private school in Greenville, Illinois, downstate.
Chelsea Arnold, West Texas A&M.
I'm Crystal Thomas, Texas A&M University.
This is Vikrant from Georgia Institute of Technology.
Logan Britt is hiding out at Kansas State. Ross Brew at the University of Tennessee at Martin. Go ahead.
Ross, you may have to move up to your mic a little bit. 'Cause
Yeah.
I can barely hear you, darling.
Well, it would help.
There you go.
There, you forgot to turn it on.
No, Zoom had me going to the other microphone. So sorry about that.
When in doubt, blame Zoom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Logan is at Kansas State. Hannah, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi. Sorry I was late. I'm Hannah Shear. I am an assistant professor at Oklahoma State University.
So now that Hannah's here, or go ahead, Sierra.
Did Danielle go? Did I miss that?
No, she went.
Oh, yeah.
Now that Hannah's here, I'm going to ask her to talk a little bit about the Cowboys showdown that dealt with Microsoft Excel. If she would talk a little bit about that, and Chelsea was there as well. So either one of those, the floor is yours.
Can I ask a question right quick before Hannah kind of starts a different topic? So off of what Na was saying and mentioning that there was an associated 1-credit course, I'm just interested in how many students do you guys tend to take? How many teams do you tend to take? Do you train and or take a backup replacement student? How does that work for you?
So Ross, let me jump in here for the AAEA. So if you're taking students to the AAEA, you're allowed to take 2 teams plus 2 alternates. Unless something has changed recently, that was the load allowance, was basically you could take 8 2 teams and then 2 alternates. And so that way, if you had that backup student, you could, if one didn't go, you had them. For the SAEA, you can take as many as you want, because keep in mind that at the SAEA, you don't compete as a team. Each student is placed on different teams, usually a team of 3. We've had to go as many as 4 when we had the 120 when I was helping out and doing stuff, and trying to get it done in that day and a half time period. So, but they're put on different teams, usually 3 from different schools. So no school will be represented twice on the same team for the SAEA. The AAEA actually has your teams and you compete as those. Does that help that part?
Yes, thank you.
Let
And
me,
I will add that what we try to do, or what I've tried to do in the past, is bring some sophomores, juniors, and seniors in. So my alternates have been my ones that I'm training. My seniors would be floating off. One of the things that we cannot take seniors that have graduated. So we lose some investment there. So if I invest, they can't go compete in the AAEA because they've graduated, and that's a university system policy. So that's something you need to check into, since that's a summer meeting after their senior year.
let me throw in a question in here too, since you're talking about the AAEA contest. I've helped with the contest, but I've never taken a team because it's during the summer. How do the rest of you who take teams to that manage to get the student commitment and buy-in? Because at least in our case here, and when I was at OSU, same thing. They're off doing internships, working on wherever, etc., and getting them back to do any kind of training, but especially even to get them back to do the to go to the conference. It doesn't work. What incentives are you using?
I'll jump in, and I want to add something else to what Sierra said. One of the good things about SAEA is if you take students right now, they are very generous in giving you $200 a student to help defray some of the costs that could either go back to the cost or help be some seed money for an ag business club. So there is that. To Stan's point, one thing that we here at Martin did a few years ago was create a Canvas course that has past Quiz Bowl questions in there that you can go in there and force the students to complete a quiz. And we had an issue the last time the meetings were in DC that we had a student that just wasn't staying on top of things, and we warned the student. It was early enough in the process, we were flying, that we were able to switch that student out and take somebody else. One other thing on that, not to take away from what Sierra was saying with regards to whatever your university policies are on taking graduated undergraduate students, the AAEA Quiz Bowl allows students to compete at the summer meetings as long as they have not taken a graduate class. So if you have students that have graduated and your university permits it, they can participate as long as they've not taken a graduate, and I need to double check this, I think it's graduate Ag Econ class. Or I don't remember if it's graduate class in general, a blanket statement, or specifically within our discipline. So Stan, that's part of what we have done here.
I can actually answer that, Ross. I had a student that was on a 3-2 program. So she was working on her PhD, undergrad and master's program. And I was able to take her because she had not had all she had was a research course. So as her senior year, she had only had a research course. So there is some, and that's the other thing, right? So for some of you guys, if they're going on into the graduate program, so they go from your undergrad to the graduate, they're still considered a student sometimes. And so that's some way you can get around some of those system policies. Does that answer all your questions, Danielle? And
Yes, thank you guys so much.
I will say one thing, I've never had a student not want to go to the AAEA meetings. And I do have to do a lot of commitment on that, but I have a little bit more free time in the summer. We would practice on Skype on the weekends. So if they're gone to internships, then I made it a point that we would practice 2, 3, 4 times throughout that summer before that meeting, because we end in late May or mid-May, and then we'd get a couple of 3 practices in before we went. And so that's a commitment on my part, not getting paid, but it's what I was willing to do for the students to keep them ready to go, and they were excited to go.
And what about that 1 credit course? Do you know how many students were enrolled in that at a time?
I think for current information, Roger will have more information on the quiz bowl credit. So when I was in graduate school at UK, so of course there's always a leader on everything. And here the leader is Jared Penn in Louisiana State. And he really, basically, he's the primary instructor on record, even though he was graduate students at that time. So I believe it's a 1 credit course that they meet like 15 minutes per week. And all they do basically is to practice quiz bowl and, or I shouldn't say all they do is that, but I help out with the practicing, but probably there are other pieces, for example, the conference experience, prep them for that, and maybe other kind of soft skill training there. And these students already be there for the whole semester, and then they go to AAEA, they'll go to SAEA to compete. And I believe the class size could be, at that time, they may be like 2 teams, which is like 6 to 8 students per class. And that's a great kind of structure to organize this, because this course, they can actually, I don't know, now I think about it, they can actually take it twice. Like, they take it once and then they take it second time. And then basically, then the team becomes more like trained better, and then they can place in great in the competitions. And for 2 years in a row, at least when I was there, Kentucky got their AAEA kind of national champion with this model. And so that's how the model works from my memory. Roger, maybe we have updated the model. I am not sure. Yeah. Oh, Jared is here.
That's what happens when you speak people's names. They just randomly show up. Well,
Jared, I just talk about your quiz bowl 1 credit hour course model at Kentucky to Danielle.
Yeah.
Danielle had this question.
Yeah. I just had to finish teaching, but I was interested in today's class. So is this my cue to talk about that 1 hour class? Okay.
Yeah.
So I like it as a teaching model, and the point of the class was to create a unique teaching environment that was for the benefit of students entering the Ag Econ degree or the Ag Business degree. It is not meant for the 6 or 8 students who you are trying to send to Quiz Bowl to compete, right? It is meant to help them be better. And it's a very easy class that a grad student can teach. It's always one of the first places I have a grad student sort of get into the classroom. And basically what we do is we have 30 terms each week following the same categories that we use in competition. Okay, so like it gives them a preview of all of the different topic areas of our major. And so I say, here are the 30 terms. Well, I should say first there's a quiz, then we introduce 30 terms, and then we play 2 rounds based on those 30 terms. And so like, it does mean that the class is capped at basically a max of 20, because I can only have 10 students per round at a max. But that's the setup. It's essentially 30 terms per week, and then play two rounds that sort of review those terms. And then the following week, they will have a quiz, a timed quiz for about 8 minutes that basically is on 20 of those randomly selected terms of the 30. Okay. And then you just repeat. You basically go, all right, we're going to do the next 30 terms. and then you play another 2 rounds. And what I've done with those rounds is that, like, the rounds are always focused on the 30 terms that will be quizzed on the next week, but it's always building. So I can always add in more terms from, you know, from a month ago, earlier in the class. And from everything I've heard, you know, students speak highly of the class in the sense that they have seen the term substitute or complement in my class before they see the technical version of it. That's another sort of, at least to me, important thing, is that it is a non-technical introduction to all of the economics terms. I do not say price elasticity is positive. I just say Coke and Pepsi are substitutes, right? Tennis balls and tennis rackets are complements. And just to sort of help them get that intuition of economics. So that way, when they see it again in the classroom, in the micro class, or when they see ag business finance, you know, they have a better sense for, it's not the first time they're seeing these terms. I sold it in terms of it being a, you know, basically an ag econ terminology class, 1 hour terminology class. But I like being able to use my quiz bowl skills and putting them to use in the classroom. And I will say there is a side benefit that, yes, you do happen to find students who are freshmen or sophomores who find out that they're good at this, and yes, probably are good candidates for taking them to SAEA, right? That's a side benefit, not the core reason I developed the class.
You said it's so much better than me, Jared. Right on time.
Yeah, I've probably taught, I mean, I made this when I was a master's student. Gosh, like in 2012, 2013, I think was the first time I taught it. And then we saw some success there because we handed it off to another grad student while I was teaching at Ohio State. They gave it to another grad student to teach. And now here at LSU, we have the same class, but like I said, the classes are capped at 20 because of the 10 person per round max. But so I just have a second section where my grad student is essentially responsible for running the rounds, right? Running the quiz. And I like it because it's so structured. There's so little for them to think about that it's a very sort of, it's like the easiest possible way to get a grad student into to be the instructor of record. And I'm very, very happy to share those materials if anyone's interested in thinking about that type of, implementing that type of opportunity.
And I'll say, going back to Danielle's point, that if you look at your individual university's curriculum, you might have something that's already a 1 hour class that's, you know, a special topics, or maybe a 3 hour class that you wouldn't need to go through the university approval process to do it, that you could just tweak it and make it fit. So, you know, that is always a possibility. I want to kind of transition into something that Hannah tried, sorry, as she's taking a bite of food. Sorry about that, Hannah. The Cowboy Showdown in Excel that she and some other faculty members at Oklahoma State helped spearhead this year. Chelsea at West Texas had some students there that participated as well. So I will let either one of those talk about that Excel competition, their experiences, and so forth.
Hello, thank you, Ross. So basically, after several years of AAEA, of attending AAEA and watching the Excel competition, and just seeing minimal student participation and just kind of a lack of clear direction as far as the usefulness of, and I don't want to step on anyone's toes or offend anyone that maybe helped write that program, but a lot of the feedback from the students were, this isn't really, we don't really know, it's not really helpful. But you go to the other side of the coin and you hear the industry say that they really need and want our students to have Excel skills, and that is something we should be providing. And I lean heavily in teaching ag business and quantitative type courses that utilize Excel. And so I wanted to potentially start an option for our students to actually implement some Excel skills, more similar to how NACTA does it, the North American College, I can't get the whole acronym right, but basically people that teach agriculture and college level, they have their own farm management competition where there's actually kind of a case study style Excel thing that they put out. And I wanted to do something similar to that, but it be a 1-day event. So that's where I put together kind of this Cowboy Showdown thing. And I originally arranged it to be more of a regional competition. And I really hope other places do this as well, specifically because some universities don't have the continual funding. It's really hard to get students to AAEA. And I'm not saying we should poach students from going to AAEA, but with the way it moves from coast to coast and then center, it can be really expensive for students and programs to attend that every year. Whereas if we were to maybe work collaboratively together to do regional things, it reduces the cost and it gives students an opportunity to see other schools in their region, which is also a really big benefit. So I put together this program. I invited K-State down, they bailed on me. I invited the University of Arkansas over, they bailed on me because of snow. But West Texas committed and stayed in, so they came up. So it was Oklahoma State versus WT. And we did a quiz bowl round or two, just because both of our programs are kind of new, trying to get quiz bowl up and going again. We wanted them to have that opportunity to network. And I will say each of us had a player on first, second, and third at Southerns. So I'm going to pretend that had something to do with our event. Because correlation
It
is
definitely did.
for sure. And so then in the second half of the day, we did an Excel competition where the students they teamed up, they decided their team of 3, and they were given a case study. Basically, they were given a flash drive with a data set on it and a set of tasks to complete, and they were given an hour to do that. And then they were asked to present their results at the end. This year's case study example, we was based livestock data, and it had some feed prices, cattle prices on monthly. And students were asked to provide summary statistics and description. They were asked to, I should have pulled this up. At one point, put in like a line of best fit, like graph these particular like death losses over time. They could have run a regression. Like one of the last tasks was to like run a regression and see if you could predict the next month's kind of prices or trends. And so the tasks kind of built on themselves, and we tried to design it to where they wouldn't necessarily be able to complete all the tasks. And we also tried to write it broadly enough that there's multiple ways that they could have achieved each task. So like some students chose to use the descriptive statistics tool in Excel, others did not. Some chose to graph it this particular way and others graphed it this way. And then they had to kind of defend those answers in a presentation at the end to the judges that they could ask some questions. It was our first shot at it. We definitely will tweak some things and make some changes, but overall, the students and all the faculty and the judges that were involved found it to be really useful. And so we're going to make some tweaks to it, but I really liked how it went. Obviously it was a WT OSU sweep because we were the only 2 there. But I do see some potential benefit in doing it, more collaboratively as a group and letting students work across universities, because we each teach things a little differently. And I think there's a lot of benefit to be gathered from that.
Is that something that has to be done face to face, or could that be some kind of virtual competition?
No, it can definitely probably be done virtually, but with that being said as well, like I'm one person and I'm teaching 4 classes in 1 semester. And that it does, like, doing things virtually is great, it's convenient, but there's a lot of behind the scenes work that has to go into doing a competition like that. There's a lot of behind the scenes work in person, but it's a lot easier to physically direct people to a room than it is to, make sure all the technology is synced up. But I think the benefit of this style, as far as the Excel skill development, is much more useful and practical than the AAEA setup, where students, I do still think there's a place for what AAEA has. But I do think this is something I hope other schools consider. Another thing is that you all already kind of mentioned is the difficulty with recruiting students over the summer for AAEA. OSU is not in a place where we don't want to offer it as credit. We want this to be a student's choice. It's extracurricular. So we're not going to create a special topics class. We're not going to do that. And so that's where I think the regional thing also might come in to be helpful, that maybe at the end of spring semester in April is probably going to be more where we host our regional competition. That way students can have practiced and rehearsed and whenever they want it all semester at their respective schools. And then we have our competition there at the end of April. And that could also maybe promote and recruit students for AAEA. If they participate in that event at the end of the semester and really like it, then they're like, maybe I am willing to put in some extra work over the summer and do Zooms like Sierra mentioned with their team or something like that. Because we're low cost, low input is what we are looking for here at OSU for the biggest output, right? And I think I have not had a single problem finding students that will do it for free, right? I actually have to tell students I can only take so many. So like this year I have 12 students who are fairly committed to Quiz Bowl consistently. I cannot bring 12, so even if you can't get credit for it, I think there's enough students that care that you can make it work.
I know my kids, the whole van ride back from Stillwater to OKC talked about the Excel and this and that. And so you could tell that they were happy that it was applied on the Quiz Bowl aspect of it. I think it helped get some jitters out. It helped get just, that first round of questions out and just more practice. And so they definitely enjoyed it. And then there's a few of them that while AAEA Quiz Bowl or Excel is a little different, there's at least one or two of them that were considering wanting to do it for AAEA. We're looking at NACTA. We're not sure if we can afford NACTA, but it would be cool if when they were being told about that too, and that it's more like the case study style. Thought it was really cool. So I found the Cowboy Showdown to be very successful for my kids. They also made some good friendships, got to look at grad student things as well. So I enjoyed the applied nature of it, and they were thankful for it too.
I guess my
People
only, sorry, I think the only, like what you were saying, Chelsea, that it's basically for that setup, NAMA, I know takes place at the end of April too. So like that feels like that's it's a lot to deal with. I don't do NAMA because I know it's a lot of work.
Yeah, we don't have NAMA here, so I know admin downstairs would like us to have NAMA, but it takes that's a whole nother beast. And you're gonna have to take away at least 2 of my classes. So I think they'd rather me teach.
I was just going to add a couple of things. Somewhere I have a long email train that involves a lot of you regarding the accessibility of Quiz Bowl. And I think it also involves how to get more diverse participation in Quiz Bowl, both at SAEA and AAEA. So if you're interested in that topic, email me and I'll add you and share that with you. But it does occur to me still that if we did have somebody that was deaf or hard of hearing or blind, I don't think our current software system would accommodate that at all, or at least very easily. So that's something, if we're going to talk about student participation, I'm still sensitive to. And I'm also realizing that I think our software no longer has an active vendor who's updating it. So it's going to have to be updated sometime. I love the idea that Stan asked about is doing some of this remotely. We're all interacting right now today and have been doing this, during COVID and now after COVID, or I shouldn't say after COVID, but in any case, this has always been really rewarding to me. And so I think that something like this could be perhaps accessible to people, remotely through some kind of remote interaction. So I like that idea. And then one other thing I'll mention is most of your universities are probably like mine in that there's a student organization sort of system. And so I looked at, I was nervous that we were making decisions about, who's going to be rooming with other people, who's going to participate, and the directing things, not only in the course, but even if we weren't going to have the course, we're still stuck with that. And so I ended up telling our students, look, you guys, can you create your own student organization? You have your charter, your membership, and then that gets covered, their travel and everything in terms of liability and other things. Best practices gets covered by the university through the student organization office. So that if you think that you're are engaged in SAEA, AAEA, Quiz Bowl, and so forth enough, that you might try to get students to sort of be involved. Ours chose the nerdiest name of all because that was what they wanted. So it's the University of Kentucky Agricultural Economics Academic Team. So anyway, just throw that out there as a possibility to utilize your university's student organization office to develop and cultivate a team, a competition team.
One of the reasons I asked that question about what could be done virtually, I completely would understand the reason and would love to have students face to face with other students at a central location or on y'all's campuses or whatever. But I have to face reality here. Believe it or not, even though it's not the West, State College is in the middle of freaking nowhere when it comes to travel. And it's expensive. We are more or less at this point being required to do NAMA. I brought it back here and then we've tried to even get out of it because nobody else wants to help with it. So how can we get our kids to connect with other students like themselves around the country and understand that, they're not the only ones being asked to solve some of these problems, whether it's through a case study deal or, I've even thought about doing almost like open mic questions via Zoom on a Sunday night or Tuesday night or whatever with our kids, but just trying to figure out a way to get our students to get out of their little culture here. I mean, we've done it with guest speakers. We use Zoom to do some virtual tours of facilities and that type of thing, because travel is, it's not only hard, it's expensive, and we don't have funding. I mean, I'm now trying to raise a bunch of funding, take a team to NAMA this year. We haven't been able to go for the last few years, but it's student activity fees don't automatically flow our way. Department funding doesn't flow our way for the most part. And so looking for things like this, plus I love that idea of solving real problems with your Excel competition. I mean, we try to do that in some of our classes, and the kids really get on that easily. And anyhow, enough of that. I babbled.
No,
That's the point. I think we would really like, this is my big lofty goal is it's going to go so well regionally that Southerns is going to reach out and say, hey, Hannah, I think we should incorporate this into Southerns, and then somehow it will be included in Southerns and can be offered virtually as well.
But you're in Southern. When I was in Ohio, they wouldn't let me play in Southern. I know darn well they won't let me play in Southern.
That's false, because I saw Sierra there, and I'm telling you, she ain't in the South.
Well, that's true. How'd you pull that off?
Oh, no, let me make it very clear, since I have been there since 2008, it's open to anybody.
Yeah.
I mean, when I moved up here, I didn't even ask, because anybody's invited. I was a member of the SAEA.
Yeah.
It's open. So the no is either before my time, which can happen, although I've been here forever, or the fact that maybe a lot of people don't think they can.
Yeah, I wasn't, the no wasn't for the team competition. It was for some other activities. I was an SAEA member for quite a number of years and only got to go to the conference once. I love the conference. It's, you guys don't know how lucky you are to have that program there, but anyhow.
I think also another thing that I've found is that, you like did it in high school when it became like the cool thing, to have like a remote classroom that was like your pen pal classroom. Like that was when smart technology first became a thing. And so I try to do that with my farm management class. And so I'm teaming up with Michael Taylor at Auburn, and both of our farm management classes are going to compete in a farm management competition. And so the students get paired up with a respective student at the other school to make these farm management decisions, and then collectively they compete to be the best farm manager. And so that is another applicable real world example where they're having to do something, but it's, it's distance. I'm not flying them to Auburn. But they're also having to use Excel skills to answer their questions and make their management decisions. So I think there's other ways outside of just, Excel competition, SAE. I think pair up with a class that teaches the same subject and find out if there's a way to build that into your curriculum.
Yeah, I want to piggyback some on what we've been talking about, the spreadsheet. I was there, I've sent out the prompt. Hannah, don't get mad that I sent out the prompt.
Okay.
But, taking a look at it when they showed me on Saturday, it was, stuff that we're doing in our basic introductory Excel course. I mean, it was, with the exception of the regression problem at the end, those are all things that I think any student that takes an introductory Excel class should be able to do. And kudos to Hannah, Daryl Peel, and Beth Norwood for putting that together, because it was something that was very accessible to most students at the junior or senior level. So well done, Hannah and others on that.
Thank you. If you want to be an outside reviewer of my tenure packet, that'd be great.
Also, it being groups, I know my kids enjoyed the Excel being in a group instead of just solely individual. Because I have one or two that were senior-ish and that have had quant and level. But for some of the younger ones that want to participate and want to see it, having a team aspect, and I let them pick their own teams for it. They did, so they kind of knew that, but it built confidence pairing some of the older ones with some of the younger ones instead of it just being a sole individual who's the smartest and most applied competition to. It's team building.
So Ross, you shared some of the Excel case study that they developed, but can you guys share like how the setup was? Like how many students did you have compete? Was it 2, 3, 5, 8? Where that kind of thing?
Yeah, so at our event, Chelsea, you brought how many students?
8 total, but 6 competed in 2 teams on Excel.
Yeah. And then we had more because obviously we were the home team. So we had like 12 students there. So we divided, and the students could choose. They didn't have to do Excel if they didn't want to. But so in total, we had 4 teams. So only 12 of that number participated in the Excel. So we had 4 groups.
Of how many in each group did you say?
3.
3. Okay. I missed that part.
Yeah. And I will outside verbally answer Na's question that she asked me in the chat that she only directed at me. We are going to be potentially in the process of publishing what we did. So if you all could like maybe not throw that Excel file around, that'd be great. Because it is gonna hopefully go through AETR. But yeah, so we divided, the teams were already assigned. We let the coaches in the respective schools pick their teams. I kind of did it the same way Chelsea did. I let them all kind of talk and strategize on who wanted to be on what team. And I have I'm a heavy freshman and heavy sophomore team. And so we kind of divided up our seniors and people who felt more comfortable with Excel. And I really enjoyed listening. Like I lurked. We had a grad student in each room where in each computer lab. That was also there just like in case something went wrong with the computers, they needed to reach me. I could walk around from room to room and kind of answer any questions. Because again, this was our first time. And so I was also afraid that if they got stuck on like task 1, I don't want them to sit there for an hour, and that's not the point, right? So I really enjoyed listening to the older students and the younger students work together, which again is one of those key industry skills that they're asking us to teach our students. And that's really hard to cultivate outside of this type of environment. So I really enjoyed the competitive nature of getting the students. They were arguing with each other, and I loved watching them argue and discuss and then reach a decision and then present it. So I think it worked okay.
Yeah, from the judge's perspective, we had, I went and helped judge. I guess I probably should have said that earlier, but it worked pretty well. There were some tech issues. We had one student group that unfortunately lost part of their work, which did things or caused the judges a little bit of headache, because when those things happen, which they are, how are you going to judge them, especially because there was an hour time limit to complete the tasks, which partly that was because students had to get back to Oklahoma City for the Quiz Bowl orientation at 6:30. So it's one of those time situations that it did mimic a lot of what you might see in industry. So I thought they did a really good job in putting it together. I'm a fan of it, and if we could do something regionally, that might drive some interest, and then we can see from there what happens. But I'm not trying to volunteer Hannah for anything else on her plate. So any other thoughts or anything? A few years ago, oh, go ahead, Jared. Sorry.
So I wanted to go back to a couple of things that Roger had mentioned. So in terms of like, call it online quiz bowl, I have experimented using Buzz in Live. It's basically you turned your phone into a buzzer. And so I can run a buzzer-like round with I don't expect my students to be in Baton Rouge in the summertime, but how do I still create some of that real-time competitiveness and gamification as opposed to making it feel like studying? I will have them all use this app essentially to still have teams with buzzers, even if they're in other locations. And I've thought about potentially doing an online version of my 1-hour class to sort of accomplish the same thing. Like essentially, I don't care where you are, as long as you're willing to meet 1 hour a week online at the same time, we can still run this class. So I wanted to mention that. The second thing, in terms of accessibility, I was sad that I don't feel like we've seen very many 1890s at SAEA. And I really, really, really think that there's a really strong opportunity where we try to pair up with Manners and we really try to chase something big to say, okay, what does this need to look like to really attract those students to participate? Does it mean that they need to have a professional networking event that would sort of incorporate some of the Manners type speakers? I just think that it's one of the best opportunities in terms of undergraduates that our profession has, and it's just they don't seem that interested in what we've got. So it's I think that there's a real opportunity there.
Sorry, I have a quick question. Jump back to the model of have a 1 credit hour course. And do you, I mean, at the Kentucky model or LSU, Jared, you're doing, do students enroll the same class multiple times as they because Quiz Bowl you can compete many times as long as you enroll and they get better. So how does that align with the university policies with courses like double dipping, all those things?
Right. So for me, the freshman sophomore class that I was telling you guys about earlier, the 30 terms, that's its own dedicated course. It's at the 2000 level. And even before it got its own course designation, it was a 2700 level, which is our sort of catch-all for the lower level. And yeah, you can take up to X number of hours in that sort of catch-all section. I actually haven't used the 1 credit for the competition team lately. But if I do, I use it at the 4,000 level for that level of independent study. So that way there's sort of like a distinction of like, on paper, there is a difference in expectations in these two classes.
Thank you. And whenever the conversation related to the software update, whenever the software is updated, let me know. So because I don't want to start something and then I have to change all different equipment and things like that.
I guess what I can say is that the questions have been the same in the last 25 years. So whether we have a software upgrade or not, you just being familiar with how the game works really carries over. I don't see, even if we get a new software, I don't foresee us, all of that prior knowledge being a stranded asset.
Because if you were watching during SAEA, they would have the same answer to questions throughout some of the rounds. They just changed the wording, or sometimes they'd ask a question and then later on the answer to a question from an earlier round was the question. It's kind of the way it works. So that happened from time to time. So students were doing that. We're running up against time. I've got to leave here in a few minutes. If y'all want to continue the discussion, feel free to do so. I just need to volunteer to pass the host duties on to, so that when I leave, I don't kill the meeting. So you'll do it, Stan? Okay. Thank you. Before I leave, once again, thank you for the discussion. I hope you got something out of it. Thank you to those that came for the first time. Definitely, I learned some stuff. Roger brought up some good points, Jared as well, that that Buzz-in Live app, yeah, we might have to use that if we can take a group to AAEA this summer. We don't have a topic for March 10th, which is our next meeting at 4 Eastern, 1 Pacific. So 1 month from today, March 10th. If you have an idea, please reach out to Hannah, myself, or Julianne at NC State, and we will be glad to consider it. As we were talking, some of the things, is there any interest in talking about travel studies at any point in one of the remaining conversations this semester? Anybody, any interest in that?
So like a study abroad?
Possibly. Travel studies, our definition for a short term, not a full semester length.
Okay.
We could do that, but I'm just throwing out ideas. It's y'all's section as much as it is mine. So
I like the idea, but that's also because I'm trying to get ideas.
okay.
Our university is really trying to push a lot of the study abroad, and we call them study abroad. Anything from anything that goes across the pond. I mean, out of country. And so I like.
Go ahead, Sarah.
No, I said I like the idea.
Okay. Yeah, I used to use study abroad, but then our travel study office kind of, knocked that out of my head that no, it's not study abroad, it's travel study. Okay, whatever, sure. So anyway. All right. Thank y'all. I'm going to pass it over. Looks like everybody's just headed out. So I'll go ahead and end the meeting, and we'll try and get this posted. So thank you. Hope to see you next month, March 10th at 4 Eastern, 3 Pacific, 2 Mountain, and 1 Eastern, or 1 Pacific. Have a great weekend. We'll talk to you all next month.